Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Founders Code. For all of you who are watching on YouTube, you might have noticed we have a new office, a new podcast studio here. So this is where you're going to be seen for the future. And our guest today is Akhil Nigam, who is a co-founder and chief product officer of FinMotech, a fintech platform focused on solving evolving chief financial officer needs around global treasury management for middle segment businesses. Hi, Akhil.
Hi, Shamil.
Thanks for coming to the episode.
Thanks for inviting.
And can you tell us a bit about what you do at Finmo and when did your fascination with numbers, with finances, has started?
Yeah, sure. I'm one of the co-founders at Finmo and currently looking after the product function. My journey basically started like 20 years ago. I did my undergrad in tech, and my goal was to be an engineer and do some hardcore tech stuff, doing some meaningful, impactful stuff is what I wanted. And I think after doing few initial years of being into techie, I went into product, and because I was fascinated about building stuff from scratch. And like when you have an idea and then you build it. So I had that itch to get something to build. So I think coming from a tech world and trying to get into why and the what, I think that inspired me. To be honest, a lot of people do ask us like, how come you have so many co-founders?
Yeah.
And it's actually it depends on case to case, because I think the treasury industry which we are operating in, it's quite wide, and you need solid pillars across industry, product. Yeah, you get bombarded with compliance, regulations, networks, partnerships, go to market, technology. So I can say that we have a solid foundation because our founding team are those pillars, right? So I think probably we have a strong foundation within Finmo. Um, when I started Finmo, like 2021, probably a little bit before, get to do everything: marketing, writing, putting stuff labels on bottles, right? Talking to a customer support as a customer support with initial clients, doing sales. So you do a bit of everything. So yeah, I started that journey doing that. Now we have scaled to about 150 people across the world globally. So yeah, it's quite.
With a lot of people, when they're starting, I see a lot of solo founders who try to break into. And I see that VCs predominantly invest into teams of two or three co-founders if we look across the scope. What would you say to those people are the benefits and the drawbacks of doing something either solo or in a small team, or having, or maybe the way of approaching looking at having larger co-founding teams?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there is no set formula that a company would be successful with one co-founder or multiple co-founders, right? Yes, there are teams and fintech companies and even non-fintech companies who have been successful with a solo founder and then the great exec team supporting the person. And then there are, yes, there are fintechs and non-fintechs that have multiple co-founding teams. So bottom line is there is no formula that can someone say that, hey, I have multiple co-founders and I'll probably be more successful. But I can say one thing: when you have shared vision, as in a company is made of people. That's what a company is, right? It's people
Yeah.
that are central to it. It's not just one person's vision or something. So it's multi. There is an idea that two or three people have looked at, or even if one person even looked at it, and that's also okay. So if one person has looked at an idea and wanted to, execute that idea, it's perfectly fine. The important thing is, if you have more co-founders and they believe in your vision, they will probably feel that they are more engaged, as in, or um,
They
I
feel the
think
ownership.
the ownership is there. I think they feel that yes, it's my idea as well. that I want to build it. So there's a feeling of strong ownership when you have a co-founding team. And then typically co-founders, they tend to do multiple things, right? It's not just I'm doing product, I'm doing sales, and that's what I'm going to be focused on. So you share the load, right? So typically I've seen great companies where we don't look at a problem being escalated. You find a problem, you fix the problem, irrespective of whoever gets to the problem first, right? You don't wait. Oh, it's not my problem. I have to go to someone else to go and fix the problem. So I think it's a mindset, right? And if you have that mindset, yes, and then I think that's why when you get more co-founders, yes, sometimes decision making becomes slower, but yes, that is something that you need to figure out. That hey, we can't go with five people make decisions on everything. We have to have some kind of a decision making tree, and yeah, that's how you go, right? So I think that's what we did in Finmo as well.
Because I know with people, when they even have one co-founder, right? When there are two of them, they have to put a lot of effort into maintaining a good, healthy, effective co-founding relationship. Some people could even go to like co-founding therapies where they
Yeah.
try to talk things out between each other. Now, when I imagine there are five people in a team, does it get harder to maintain that good relationship, the conversations, the kind of
Yeah.
respectful?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Then there are more people. There is definitely going to be more misunderstandings and a lot more things because there are more people, right?
Yeah.
So you have to talk to multiple people to get things done. But I think when you choose your co-founders, trust is very important, right? The mutual trust, being honest, and being transparent about how you feel in your mind and heart, that prevents those misunderstandings. But if you're not honest, as in you're not transparent with your co-founders, then actually he's not a co-founder, you're just sharing a title, right? Specifically, co-founders are one who can talk good and who can actually say, hey, I don't think this was right, I think we could have made this better, right? And then you talk and you discuss and you disagree. Of course we can't agree to everything. There are disagreements, there are agreements, and then but with being honesty and being transparent to each other with the trust, I think you overcome that. And I think additionally, being having more people as co-founders, it adds a lot of complementary skills, and clarity on response. The important thing is the clarity on responsibilities as well, because yeah, a lot of the co-founders bring unique strengths to the table. Like we have many, because each is bringing a unique strength, right? So I have people as co-founders who is very good in relationships and partnerships. One is with product, which is what I'm leading, and one is with compliance. Other is on the go-to-market, more commercial side of things. So I think we are, if you say, it's like a pizza made with the best ingredients,
Yeah.
if I put it that way.
I sometimes feel that too. When I have to like take care of like sales, marketing, and all of that, I would always go back to thinking it would be nice to have somebody who will feel the ownership and will not quit when things get tough. But the thing that's stopping me, like having done multiple companies, is the problem was when you at some point of the company's growth, you start sometimes noticing that some of the people are not growing as fast, and there are people on the market who would be able to do a better job at that point. But at that point, it's almost like you got married already, and each time you make a proposition to become a co-founder, it's almost like a marriage.
Yeah.
And then the best thing for the company would be to put another person in the role. But then, does that ever overcomplicate things when you have five people with ownership? Or maybe I'm just not seeing because I haven't experienced anything like that for
Yeah.
myself.
No. I think when you think about it, definitely ownership. That which is why when you have multiple co-founders, you have to agree on certain things, right? What's the area of responsibility you're going to take? So have some kind of clarity, right? Conflict is inevitable. There is so if you think that no, it's not going to be, I think you're fooling yourself. But I think managing it constructively. Um, I mean, if I say through, I mean, nice words could be empathy and active listening, strengths, which it's actually not. I mean, it's not false. I mean, it's like, do you need these things, right? Um, and I think when you get into this kind of a marriage, right, you accept that it's like a marriage, right? You accept the person with the likes and dislikes, right? But
Yeah,
you still continue with that marriage. So I was talking to somebody earlier in the morning, somebody joining our product function, coming from a different function,
yeah,
mostly from operations, and I was actually telling about the same thing. Like, it's a beautiful marriage, you know, that it's just that you're not living with the person, but you are just accepting them as they are, right? And then if you can survive doing that, which actually brings in a lot of patience, you have to deal with. There are definitely not all battles have worth winning. You lose some, you win some. Sometimes you definitely think, oh, I think, oh, why wasn't I part of this discussion, that discussion, decisions? Those things are there, but you still, at the end of the day, you still keep going on, right? So I think that's what makes you well enough. If you can still keep on going despite these challenges and not quit, right? Because that's one thing that you look in a founder is like, if you quit, I think you I mean, yes, there are different areas where you quit. That's a different topic. But if you are quitting because, oh, I don't see, this is not my company anymore, I don't see this happening, that happening my way or highway, kind of thing, nah. So it's, you are actually just a employee. So I think the important thing is you still continue and you still sail through. And important thing is the vision, the mission, right? The people that you have who have believed in your vision and have left their jobs. There could be some, we have some people who are coming from really large organizations, right, who had great insurances and the whole company was covered and whatnot, right, and business class tickets and things like that. But they came here because they took a plunge, that, and they believed in the vision and they came here, right? So we have to think in that, right? Oh, we are all working. I'm not here to take care of them, but what I'm saying here is they have believed in this vision, so that is more important. Keeping that vision, mission, and the vision going, that is really more important and should be above the egos that comes with when you have multiple people in the room. If that makes sense.
and for any founders who are building their product, can you tell us about maybe some of the secrets of what it takes to really approach your product in the best way as a as taking experience from a product officer? Because a lot of people, they don't even exactly know what does it take to make a difference from project manager to product manager, and what kind of things you have to think about constantly to ensure the product is successful and not just technically viable.
No, it's a great question. So, yes, there is a difference between a project manager and a product manager, right? If you are, so I think, let me just get back to basics before I answer the question the way you asked. There is a big difference between a project manager and a product manager. A project manager is one where there is, the objective has been defined, right? And then you are just executing it, right? And executing it in a way where you deal with the tech team, you deal with multiple people, you create a raid log, is risk, actions, issues, and decisions. So you're great at recording, you're great at making decisions, and then you're coordinating. You're a well coordinator across multiple stakeholding teams, and then making sure that everybody is aware of the risks and the decisions that have been taken. So that's a project manager. If someone becomes a product manager and just does this, he's actually a project manager and not a product manager, which is why defining the product is the job of a PM, a product manager. If you can't define, basically you're not doing product management. So when I say define the product, it's basically, it's more about why you're doing this and what are you going to do with this, right? Why and the what, not the how. How is more later, right? How is maybe project management, if I keep it more simple. So if the why and the what are the ones that the product manager is more focused on.
So basically aligning all of the technical stuff with the actual goals that need to be achieved using
Yeah,
the
I mean,
product.
first is like why we are doing this, why we want to build this treasury module in the platform. So you're building this treasury model because there's a problem. So what's the problem statement? You backward track. Okay, there's a problem statement. This is the problem. The problem is with the SMBs. How big is the market? 50% of the GDP of a particular country is SMBs. Employment is close to 50% is SMBs, right? So getting to that data defines the, oh yeah, there is a problem. Okay, then you look at the market, and then the market is talking, hey, how is the current market addressing it, and what is the gap that is missing in that to address it. And then when that's the gap is what the product manager has to focus on, right? Which is, how can I address it with some kind of an automation, or tech comes very late, right? Like, I want to solve that gap, and that could be solved by maybe you know not a piece of code. It could be just a process, or maybe just I have three people sitting who just do that, right? I just hire an analyst who just does it on Excel, and then give that, also solves the problem. But when you can talk about tech, when you want to solve that problem in a more automated fashion that can be scalable and can be actually become a product in itself, that can, you can actually go out and commoditize it and sell it across multiple markets, right? That's when you start thinking about tech and people, and I need to have a team and things like that. So I mean, coming back to the question you asked about founders and companies thinking about product, within Finmo, I think um, we we believe in one thing: we are a product-driven organization, right? Um, which, what it means is that we're going to find the problem. We know the problem. We are going to validate the problem, and we are going to build that problem, and then we are going to make sure that as we expand it to an extent, we validate as we go along with customers feedback and things like that. If we build something and it does not sell, I think we should can it and move on to the next thing. So how quickly you can it and how quickly you move on to something more meaningful is what is, I think that's what drives a product function, so I think that's where your tech and agility and all those other things come into play.
I can see that you clearly have a lot of experience in the field, around the field. And what I noticed for a lot of founders, me included, really, is when one of the first engagements in the world, in the industry you have is by building a startup. You don't have necessarily have the experience of actually working for another company, a well-oiled machine, where you can see how it's structured, how the motivational structure is, how like the management, the people, how the machine runs. And when you're trying to build something of your own without having any of that experience, that kind of you have to make a lot of tests which you could have avoided. So a lot of people tell me like, "Oh, I wish I've worked for another company." With you, once you finished your masters in Dublin, for a few years you've done independent contracting work, right? And then you moved on to like working for larger companies like Citi. Could you tell us about that experience? What was that like? And what was your, like, how did you feel during those years?
Yeah, life in Dublin was Guinness, and yeah, it was
And singing
amazing.
in Temple Bar.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I love Dublin for the food. I mean, there are people who definitely would differ with me, but I actually love Dublin for the food and the Guinness for sure. Yeah, I think life at City was exciting. I think it's one of the few corporate banks that have a great footprint for both commercial and large market when it comes to corporate banking. They're less reliant on partner banks. So they own the platform experience, was able to provide better liquidity solutions, cash management solutions, but to the larger enterprise market. So their key customers are actually huge, large conglomerates. And so anyway, I I did a lot of contracting, which was more like you specified purpose stuff. I'm being hired to do specific stuff around SEPA because at that point in time there was a big movement around single European, the SEPA stuff that was prevalent, which was one single payments area across European Union. So I was part of that. I was doing a lot of ad hoc specific stuff for the banks. But these banks, they actually, when they want to do something, I'm not saying, I'm not generalizing this, but yeah, typically what happens is banks do outsource plenty of mandatory regulatory compliance specific stuff to, let's say you want to build a product to automate case management, for example. So typically, what rather than building something from scratch, they actually go out and tender like an RFI and look out for fintechs who are actually doing this. So yeah, I when I was on the other side, I was actually part of those fintechs that were addressing those problems. But when I joined a bank, so it's basically I'm on the other side, which is the client side. So I'm
Yeah.
the one who is consuming those solutions. So the life is more like, my life has gone much easier. I don't think it got easier, but it changed my perspective around things because I was looking at the big picture as compared to, so, just solving the problem with being as part of the on the other side. Um, but I think coming back to city, I do learned a lot. But I was typically working on one specific product. I didn't get an opportunity to work on multiple. And so that was Dublin. But City actually also moved me to Singapore to lead one of the commercial cards rollout for a public sector. It's public sector, so I need to be careful about
Okay.
naming. And typically in public sector, there are um, there are ministries, stat boards, and a lot of other things. So um, they typically do not want to talk to five different people in the bank. They want one person doing. I mean, when I say five people in the bank, like one person doing sales, one managing the account, one doing demos, one doing service, one doing product, and then the whole
Usually
gamut
one
of
partner
people.
manager.
Yeah, so it's like, so they don't want that, and I think any other company also, but some large companies have the same kind of setup, so service talk to service, but typically public sector, they don't have that kind of setup like multinationals do. So I think definitely banks have a lot of complex setup, and I think it's because they're just built that way. They're large and they're built for scale. So, but it's like sometimes people call it as cog in a wheel. I don't say that, but yeah, you just, okay, I'm doing service, I'm just doing service, right? So anyway,
And
I was
has
hired. Sorry.
working in a large company like that has changed you in any way? In the way you approach like working with other people, maybe it made you tougher because sometimes you have to go through a lot of sometimes toxic situations where which test your character and make you either adapt or evolve. Have you noticed any like transformational moments for you personally, like before you've joined City and after you've left and looked back at those years?
Um, yeah, I mean, typically at large companies, you just tend to see that why don't you move fast? Moving fast was a problem because yes, definitely there are multiple layers of approvals that you get. Plus, when you are in a more job, multinational companies, then there are more layers of approval. But I think great thing working at that the bank in Dublin City was I was learning the best in terms of the product itself that a lot of corporates do love. So at least that part I was really happy with. But building my character, um, coming back to the question, I think um, I think the character thing mostly was built when I actually started my own startup. Um, because early on, I thought that success was product market fit and recurring revenue, right? That's defined success. So, but then when we onboarded our first treasury client, we had an unsuccessful FX hedge or a conversion due to a cutoff time. So it wasn't a
It was a
bug or
skill issue.
anything. Yeah, it wasn't a bug or anything of that sort. It's just that there was a markets are FX works with the cutoff times, right? And they could not do a hedge because of the cutoff time, and they it wiped out few days like weekend and few days, and there was a holiday on a Monday of their cash runway, right, in that currency. I think that moment changed me a bit because when you build a platform that holds and moves other people's capital, and it forces a shift, from hey, you are not building a product, you're building some impact which is wiping out somebody's runway, right?
The
It's
amount
a
of
you
responsibility.
it's the amount of responsibility that comes with that. It's like decisions stop being abstract, right? You can't make those kind of abstract decisions, and you start having some real human consequences when you are dealing with somebody else's cash, right? I think that when I noticed that, I kind of gathered everyone and it's like, hey guys, we have to be. I mean, it wasn't our fault, but it just gives a sense of realization that we have to build a lot more capabilities around like maker checker, making sure that nobody makes more those kind of mistakes. I mean, there was a big issue around analysts sending like large sums of money to a beneficiary, and then there was a case that turned into multiple years of fight between the beneficiary and the payer. So these kind of things do happen. But how, as being us from the industry, how can we be more responsible and try and identify those issues and give tools to the customer so that those kind of issues don't happen. So I asked everyone and did a bit of a pep talk and say like, hey, we need to develop resilience and humility. In treasury, every bug latency can cost customers real money, right? Rigorous testing, build playbooks for outages, and we also developed a kind of culture for admitting the mistakes. Because I think
How did you
culture
do
of,
that?
huh?
How did you do that? How do you build a culture around admitting to mistakes?
Because I think being honest about a problem and bringing it out probably goes a long way. Is what I have seen, what I have experienced myself.
Because people
Because
are generally they're like, okay, Akhil is my boss. I want him to see me as the best kind of person. If I show him that there is a bug there, he'll think that maybe it's me doing my job badly. I don't want to risk it. Let somebody else find it and tell it to him. How do you turn that around to being like, hey, I found the bug and we can fix it in time?
I think it's more about highlighting that even if you make a mistake, I mean, we have to look at the impact of the mistake. But depending on how much impact, I think definitely we have to learn from those mistakes. So I think that's the kind of culture that we are trying to establish within the company, which is, yes, everybody make mistakes. Some do make really big ones that could cost company a lot of reputational risk and monetary risk. I think that one we don't want to go to that extent, because that is definitely uh, but I'm talking about stuff where, yeah, I even if it is with a customer, right, and maybe we added a new piece of code and that actually resulted in a downtime. We do send out a note to our customers apologizing for it, and then we also mention the reason behind it, and we have to stick to more honest to the decision. Plus we also have to mention more about how what kind of actions we are taking, to so that it doesn't happen, right? And then what we do is, when we go back internally, we set up more specific stuff around, I mean, there are certain processes that you have to change in terms of how things go into production, from test, and how, so we go and tweak those processes. However, the question, coming to the question you asked about how we are building the culture of admitting mistakes, I think it's more about setting the tone at the top, which is, when I make a mistake, I go and apologize, right? Irrespective of, so when I'm talking to the clients, I do say, hey, we made a mistake. We are trying to get better. So, and then I expect that people who are working with me have the same kind of mindset, because what happens is, you lie, you probably can escape that particular situation, but sometimes, the problems do come out in a different way, so, and when it comes from a different way, then it basically becomes a lot more
Bigger problem.
bigger problem as compared. Yeah, so I think calling that out to people and saying that problems are still acceptable to an extent, there is setting up that honest culture, is much more important. And every person we interview, I interview, when because this was one of the biggest challenges I had when we saw this idea, was like hiring, right? When I think one of the biggest problems for founder, that if you ask me, what doesn't
Hiring.
let me sleep at night, is hiring, right? How can we get people? Because as a founder, our job has to be more strategic. Think about the vision. What can we do next? Where is the world going? How can we make sure that the vision is, and the vision and the mission is as per what our, and basically keeping all the customer focus around, right? Um, and if we get into day to day, it becomes a lot more difficult, right? So, which is why we need people, and people who think like you, or maybe much better than you, who tell you, hey, this can be done better, and I will do it. I will bring more scale to this, automate this process with multiple tools coming in, and those kind of, I mean, that's the holy grail, right? Every founder wants, like, people who are much more smart, who understand and think beyond what others couldn't. I think for us, it's more about spending time there, on the hiring and the people. And I think one of the questions in our interviews are always around mistakes and how you overcome them, what do you learn from them, and I think there are definitely a lot of case questions around those things, because we would like to make sure that when people come in here, they come with that mindset of being honest and transparent about what they do day in day out.
The thing is, people are so scared about making mistakes. Even to the point, I was talking to a founder friend of mine, and I could clearly see that he has an opportunity to grow. And I was telling me, we were talking all about why he isn't doing the actions that are necessary to, take all of those new customers. And eventually it turned out to be, after like an hour of conversation, it's like, I'm scared that if we have more customers, there will be more chance of making mistakes and then getting into those like arguments and things. And the real thing is like, mistakes are okay. They happen at like Amazon yesterday or day before yesterday. Like,
Mm.
so like half the world is left with a service. Like, if huge companies like that make mistakes and recover and continue working. Mistakes happen at every stage. It's just admitting, fixing, learning, moving on, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And do you also think it's important for the founder themselves as leaders to show that kind of behavior, so then others in the, so it's not just something that you tell everyone to do, but then
Yeah.
it's something that you show in your own example.
Exactly. Absolutely. That's what I mean. Like, I don't come and tell them that, look, follow what I do. It's basically just from your actions. Because if you are true to yourself, what you preach, as in, and they come in your actions, and when you have smart people around you, they will pick it up and see, hey, I think that's a better strategy, and I should basically like let me try it in a different way. So yeah, so far that has worked for us. But yeah,
And
I
what do
think
you,
personally, I would say building Finmo had refired my priorities, like short-term trust over long-term growth, short-term growth. And
and what would you say are important qualities that a founder should have?
I think I touched briefly on it, that most the founders should be more strategic and visionary. That's where they need to spend more time on. Um,
And what about the first initial years of building the company? Because even though we kind of want to be strategic visionary, there's just so much operational overhead. They have to do marketing, sales, delivering sometimes, hiring, and HR, finances, dealing with company registration and everything. That it's really hard to kind of pull your head out of it and just start thinking about vision and strategy. You almost feel like you don't have enough time for
no,
that.
yeah, absolutely. I think when you start small, that's where most of the founders spend time on, which is doing multiple things, right? And I think that's eminent, because you start with two people, then you grow into 5 people, then 10 people, then 20 people. But as you grow, then you have to make sure that you come out of those day to day. Um, but yes, when you start small, you have to do everything. Like, I mean, like for us, all of us, we were doing sales, because most of our investors are, how do you sales? Do you have a regular sales motion? I said, yeah, we do. We want to do that sales motion. But at this point in time, it's mostly, I mean, this is like when we started first year, and mostly like most of the sales was founder led. So we're doing demos to the prospects. We explain the benefits of what the product cannot do, understanding what their problems are, so that we can fit. So it's more solution selling, rather than just listening. Hey, this is what my platform does. And so the thing is, great product does not do great sales, right? So important is to mold yourself as more of a salesy guy or a commercial guy, which is more focused on, I mean, there is a commercial guy who is more focused on how can I bring benefit and then commoditize it, right? And then there is one person which is, I would say, a product person like me, is I want to solve a problem for this customer. Okay, even if I don't get paid, I'm okay, but I'm happy at the end. This is how founders think. The first day or first year, like they're not thinking about how much I can get from this customer. They're thinking about how can I solve the problem, and this problem resonates with me, and I think it resonates with me, which is why I'm building this. And how can I solve that problem? So that's the mindset. I think we all founders should have, and I think most of them do, in my experience. So getting into talking to the customers, understanding their problems, molding the problems, doing demos, configuring. Like we went to an extent where we created a back office, and then we actually onboarded the customer, and yeah, and they started transacting. We called them every day, asking, hey, are you feeling comfortable using the dashboard? Is there any kind of issues you're getting? Oh yeah, my counterpart sitting in Philippines has an OTP issue. Oh, okay, let's figure out. And that's something that we should look at it. Oh yeah, there was in a roadmap, because there are certain carriers in Philippines who does not expect OTP. Okay, what should we do? Let's launch 2FA ASAP. So 2FA is more like a QR, like an authenticator, because you can still find SMS platform doing OTP, which was not a problem. But you still have to look at certain markets where there are certain regulations where you can't log in with an OTP, for example. So, or you require some kind of an approval to send OTPs. So yeah, we rolled out authenticator mechanism within a week, and then we gave it to them and said, "Hey, why don't you ask your Philippines team to start using 2FA via authenticator?" And it worked out. So it's like as and when you are closer to the customer, you get those right nice feedback, which is in your roadmap, but probably 3 months down the line. But it just got you know um, moved much earlier in the curve because you are actually listening to the feedbacks directly. So I think the more closer to your customer, but it's not always. I would say today, as after running this for 4 years, I spend more time with the customer success and sales team, listening to feedback, because now I'm not doing. I do listen to few customer calls, as in to understand how it goes, but we need more holistic data and feedback.
Yeah.
So I spend more time there to get that. So yeah, so I think to answer your question, yes, it is a challenge beginning because you want to be there in the action where the action is happening, and you want to sometimes you take want to control because you think that if you take control, you're probably going to do it right the first time rather than depending on somebody because it could go wrong, then my customer gets pissed and things like that, right? So you want to do that yourself. So that's where my thing about what I was saying, hiring the people that I can fully trust and know that they are actually going to solve it, and I don't need to tell them how to solve it. They actually proactively being proactive and thinking through, like, I think that's the real challenge, is what a founder has to go through. And I think if you solve that, that possibly solves a lot of problems from scalability standpoint.
And another thing I can see almost all of the time, and something that a huge mistake that I did building my first startup is, first I thought that everybody thinks like me. If I think this is a great idea, then everybody will think it's a great idea. And the first release, I don't need customers to tell me, like, they're humans too. I can think what the dashboard should be, what features should be. I'll just concentrate on building something that's going to be amazing, like to compete with the hugest platforms out there. I'll do that, but better. And I'll work for 3 4 years until it's perfect, and then I'll show it to the customers, and everyone's going to be like, "Well done, this is amazing." What can you tell to founders thinking in that way, and to kind of persuade them to release the early kind of shit and sticks kind of version of your product to get the user to say basically whether the idea they have in your mind actually resonates with them, and
Yeah.
whether you need to pivot, do something else, do another iteration early on.
Yeah, I think you touched upon some of those already, but typically, the world is moving much faster than before, right? Our generation, this generation, I think the AI generation, they get access to information much faster. And today, if you want to solve, and I like, even product management has become, I would say, relatively, from a market study standpoint, things have become much more simpler. Or I would say, no, I won't say simpler because it's still you have to put your head there, but it has gone down from, let's say, a week to 2 days, or maybe a day, because of the all the AI tools that you have, like the chat GPTs of the world.
Prototyping.
So even prototyping everything, and you even market research or study, right? If you want to validate a particular problem, you can actually feed in like few surveys, and then it will actually tell you, this is what is I'm seeing, and you can actually quickly validate those things. So from a product management perspective, validation of some of the market, testing the market, or testing the problem, has become much more easier. So like if I want to become build a dashboard, right, I can look at and basically do a research saying that, how tell me what are the key differences between A, B, C, and D, right? And it tells you straight away. And then what are they not focusing on, right? And then it will tell you certain generic stuff. So you build
Yeah.
from there. So I think the market research
And can I
and
just
yeah, sorry.
slightly clarify for people, when you're doing that kind of market research, especially around the futures, seeing like whether this is something that my customer segment will need, how do people go over the hurdle of ChatGPT going and telling you this is fantastic, you've hit on a really great idea, this is absolutely something that's going to work? How do you make it give you the real answer, the critical thinking answer?
I think it's more about the kind of prompts that you give ChatGPT, but it's not going to let you give an entire straight answer what you need. It's probably going to be because it's just looking at the data that's fed, right? What's in your head is you can still probe, but it may always come back saying, "Hey, I don't have access to this information. What exactly do you need? Do you want me to?" So I think you still need some level of your brains, to use and identify what exactly you're going to trying to target, right? Even if you, let's say, you are a feature set that you want, that still requires a brain, but you can just ask them to compare the two dashboards. They may not have access to those dashboards. They may come back and say, hey, I can only see a couple of things on the website. They can do solve this really well, and this does not. But they're just reading the website and they're just doing apples to apples, or apples to oranges, and telling you out there. I think that it still need that kind of a human touch to go in there and look at, okay, yeah, this is what it's doing. Because ChatGPT does not understand order to, or maybe it does, like order to cash and accounts receivable are probably the same thing, just said differently in different markets, right? So, but if you ask a finance guy, yeah, they are almost the same thing. It's actually doing this because they are. It's still an AI, but it still needs that niche kind of the knowledge to make that call. So um, I think you still need to do a bit of your own thinking. Um, um, but yes, it complements. It acts as a catalyst in terms of getting the data available to you much faster, and then basically the PMs can go and do their own research and can make some deductions out of it. I mean, that's what I've seen. Again, it's my opinion, and there are definitely a lot of people who probably do it in a much more sophisticated way to get the right answers.
Yeah.
So that's purely my opinion.
And can you tell me about Mo AI?
Ah,
How did you come to it? Because I know there is, that's something that's on everyone's mind, with AI. How should we be utilizing it? Is it really an AI bubble happening? Should we put a lot of focus on it? Should we give it some time? What was your thinking around adapting to the AI era?
yeah. Look, I think even when we started, we were mostly thinking about um, um, we want to solve our products and solutions should be focused towards the middle, the small and middle segment of businesses, because they lack the tools that they need, and mostly treasury tools are served well by the enterprises platform, but there are definitely small platforms doing bit of everything. However, if you, let's say, for example, if you for a minute you think yourself as a finance controller or someone, right, in a company, um, you would think about day to day is like my working capital. I am only having X amount of cash in the bank. I am supposed to be receiving Y from a specific supplier, right? I still have to make some invoices from to some vendor in some other market. So these are the kind of thought process that goes into a controller and the CFO day to day, right? So when we thought about it, we thought, okay, let's build the tools that can solve these problems that they face day to day. So we solved for cash visibility, which is giving them visibility across multiple markets by connecting their banks, their cash positions in multiple currencies. So that's at least giving them some, okay, I don't have to work on an Excel. The platform itself gives me the cash across multiple entities, markets, and few things like that. Secondly, if I want to move the money, I don't have to log in into a bank and then do it. I can actually simply do a movement of the money from my Finmo dashboard, because otherwise I have to go, okay, there is a purchase order, there is a AR, AP, and then you actually go into the bank and make the payment. Then you upload that receipt invoice into an accounting platform, and then you do a match. So there are plenty of platforms involved, and then there is plenty of processes involved with a click of a button. There is one thing which was common, which is a human sitting and a platform and then doing, and some of these tasks are mundane, you have to just do every day, right? So our thought process about Mo AI was like people, like for people like you and me, our lives are simpler, like sitting in a car talking to anybody. Hey Alexa, hey Siri, do this for me, right? So it has made our life a little bit more simpler, day to day, when it comes to day to day tasks. Calling your friend or calling your wife, and dictating, and now ChatGPT also is doing plenty of stuff around that. We saw that there was a lack of these kind of intelligent tools missing in our, and I think that's where the world is heading to, because once you have this, you see that we would want to make life simpler more on the business side too. I think the whole thesis of implementing more AI was to build intelligent advisor for the finance functions, so that the day-to-day tasks of an analyst and making payment to someone, all those tasks, right, they can be managed through an agent, right? And then more, as soon as you log in into Finmo dashboard, Mo will actually tell you five top things that you need to look at, and then it will also tell you, hey, you're running low on cash in this specific currency. Would you like me to convert it into this currency and make a payment to this vendor? It's due for payment in next 2 days, and things like that. And it takes 2 days to make the convert, for example, because some currencies are not available. There could be some exotic currencies you're talking which takes more time to convert and things like that. So we want to have that intelligence within the platform, right? And Mo is going to take all those day-to-day stuff from CFOs and manage it. So yeah, and I think the roadmap for Mo is like, it keeps on adding. The more we learn,
Yeah.
and today, hey, can we do this with that? Okay, yeah, you can. There are more prompts that you can add. So I think the world is moving towards automation. The world is moving towards convenience, and I think we'll see. Internet of Things have been there for ages, right? Now you can, your payment stuff is within objects. It's embedded. Similarly, your intelligence is also going to be embedded into those objects that you're going to use, and they possibly can make their own decisions, as in pre-fed by humans, but can you don't have to teach them about, okay, I'm done with my podcast and then mic is off, everything is off, and I don't have to switch off. It does automatically because I've fed certain events or information into that. So I think that's where the world is heading to. That's the trend. And yeah.
And what are the main barriers do you have to go over when trying to get the adoption? Because I can imagine a lot of people would say that they have trust issues allowing access to their finances to basically an artificial worker they have working for you, right? How did you approach it? Because I think that's something that a lot of companies, a lot of founders are battling at the moment.
No, that's a great question. I think, yes, the trust thing is definitely a key factor when it comes to handling money, as I mentioned. But I believe that you have to have a risk based approach and a risk assessment of, so for example, if you want to move the money, and if let's say you can, based on your risk assessment, you can automate certain payments to a beneficiary that you have always sent funds to, and it's below a certain threshold, for example. But if it is to a beneficiary that has never been sent any funds, or it's the first time, we can, based on your risk policy, you can say take it out of it, right? So um, but the most important thing that I'm focusing on here is to have that ability, and then build, based on a risk based approach, build the policies that the advisor can work with. Because yes, 100% true. uh, if you let it to a platform manage it, yeah, there could be, and everybody make mistakes. Mistakes are there, but yeah, we have to making sure that how we can mitigate those mistakes is through a risk assessment. Yeah, that's the short answer to it.
And as the last question, could you give some of the advice? Because right now, all of the founders, everybody in the field, in the industry, is probably anxious about where the world is heading, what the world's gonna look like, and making enough use of AI. A lot of them are struggling with either loneliness, feeling like they're not successful enough when they hear about all of those raises online. What kind of burst of motivation can you give them to help them not give up on the journey?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if I can give someone any kind of I'm not preaching here, because I'm still also learning constantly from, as with my own experiences and people around me. But I think what has worked for me is that having strong relationships as a founder is essential, to cultivate a network of trusted mentors, advisors, and peers who can provide guidance, support, and honest feedback. I think having those people around you would definitely add a lot of value.
And how do you find those people?
I mean, you look for them, they look for you, and yeah, I think there is no again set formula on finding them. It's more about as you find across the way, right? There are some people, even if let's say there are, when we speak to customers or partners, even if we don't work with them, we still maintain a relationship with them, right? Because there is something you learn from someone every day, right? I think that's what I believe in. Just that the partnership didn't materialize doesn't mean that you don't can talk to them. So that's just a thesis that I go with. So typically, you, going to these networking events, as where you find a lot more people looking for something similar. um, like we have these within Singapore, we have this SFA, Singapore FinTech Association. They do organize a lot of events. So when we go to these events, we meet like-minded individuals who are also struggling to the same kind of set of problems, and some are more matured, as in terms of, oh, I have seen this. Hey, you know what? When you go to this particular market, be careful about this, right? So there are some people who have already experienced those things, and they are very open to share those kind of feedback as you go, right? So um, yeah, it's just that you have to find those opportunities and grab them as you go, because every opportunity may give you some lesson, you know uh, or maybe just a friendship, right? So but I think the key to this whole thing is that you have to have that open communication, and and active listening. That's key, to help deepen those discussions and connections. So it should be relatable. Oh yeah, you know what, I feel the same, right? And I feel your pain. But this sometimes work for me, and so it's like, again, there's no formula. You just, sometimes you still have to go with gut, and you just jump, and you typically survive, right? So but yeah, there are few basic things what I mentioned, about active listening and the open communication. I think that they are key.
Being a decent human,
Yeah,
basically, right?
absolutely, man, absolutely. And the thing is, investing in relationships beyond just business, because at the end of the day, it's all people. They are centric to what you do. People who are believing in your vision, people you are working with day to day as your partners in the banks that you work with, and your customers, right? I think these, and especially the relationships beyond your business, right? They provide this kind of personal friendships and family, that provides you the emotional stability that you need to sustain, for some kind of long term dedication. Like my wife, I tell her, like, hey, this AI is coming and killing everyone, the jobs are going away, and things like that. And she's like, there will be a time when the entire jobs will be taken over by AI. And I'm like, you're right, but who's at the end of the day, someone has to start a company and then employ, right? So the human touch is not going to go away completely, right? Of course there are people who are differing on that statement, but at least I had someone to talk to and discuss and share ideas, right? And I discovered something about it. And yeah, I think that's what you need, I think, as you go along.
So, world, don't worry. Human touch is not going anywhere. AI will take its place. We'll
Yeah,
always
you'll
have
take
our
its
own
place.
place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think humans, we made AI, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not saying Skynet is taking over yet, but
Yet.
yeah, cool.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode, for sharing your story. I think it's going to be really useful to hear to a lot of founders who are just starting to know to value relationships, to know to lead from the heart and lead by your own actions. And I think to everyone who's listened to this episode in full, that get a lot of value out of it. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine, and happy to be here.